Well, hey, good evening to you. I'm out doing a little squirrel hunting this afternoon. However, where I'm at, there's no firearms allowed, no bows, none of that. So I'm doing some slingshot hunting. I've never done that before. Was hoping one of my kids still had a slingshot laying around, but they did not. So I went and picked one up, and it's just kind of a basic Walmart slingshot. I think Daisy made it. And using 3/8 inch steel balls. So I got spider webs on me here. So just getting out, man. And again, no firearms or bows or anything allowed. So we'll see how this goes. Also, we are going through the book of Matthew. Now, the book of Matthew, man, it's incredibly important we go through this book. I believe to many degrees, the church is ignorant to the teachings of Jesus Christ. And it's important you go through the book, verse by verse, to really get some deep insight into what it is he's trying to tell us. Why? What should we be doing? How should we be behaving? How do we really evolve this relationship with him to go the way he wants it to? How do we be about our Father's business? You know, there's so many things in there that the church has just straight up dropped the ball on. And I think it's important to go through verse by verse. So that's what we're doing. We're going to go through it verse by verse. We're in the genealogy section. And today is really a pretty interesting day, to be quite honest, because English interpretation has neglected somebody in this. And I can kind of show you how I figured that out and who is missing in this genealogy. Obviously, Matthew's interpretation is perfect. The Greek version of this. It's the English interpretation that is wrong. That's the thing that's wrong. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of walk a bit. I'm hoping, just going to stir up some squirrels. I'm not going to sit or anything. I'm just going to walk and chat with you and hopefully stir up a squirrel along the way. If I do, I'm going to take a slingshot shot at it. As best I understand, it's, you know, you're obviously not going to penetrate it with that ball. So you really just need to get them in the head. So this is a tight shot. We'll see how I do. I didn't do so well with the .22 rifle the other day, so we'll see how this one goes. All right, I'm going to pause for a second because I had to break out my Bible, which is in the backpack. I'm going to go through a few verses, and we'll kind of continue our walk here and see if we come across a squirrel. I haven't heard anything moving at all, so we'll see how this goes. It is late in the afternoon, too. I've found through my squirrel hunt experiences that about 40 minutes after sunrise is by far the best time. That's when they all pop out, man. But yeah, we're going through the book of Matthew, and where we are is we're in the genealogy, and we're almost into the captivity where they're being led off into Babylon, and that's actually what we're going to see today. But it gets confusing, and it is, I strongly believe, is English interpretation, because if you read the Greek, you're like, well, there's the error right there. But we're going to pick it up where we left off. Matthew 1, starting verse 10. Hezekiah begot Manasseh. Manasseh begot Amon. Amon begot Josiah. Josiah begot Jeconiah and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconiah begot Shealtiel. All right. Here's the problem with what we just read. If you go to the First Chronicles, because ultimately, according to this, the English interpretation, what you have is you have Josiah begot Jeconiah and his brothers. Remember that. That's very important, plural brothers. And then they went off into captivity, and then Jeconiah begot Shealtiel. All right. If you go to Chronicles, we're going to go to First Chronicles. It's going to give kind of the family of Solomon, which is what they are. And it says this in First Chronicles 3, starting 15. The sons of Josiah were Jehonan, the firstborn, the second Jehoiakim, the third Zedekiah, and the fourth Shalom. The sons of Jehoiakim were Jeconiah, his son, and Zedekiah, his son. So here what you have is you have really Josiah is not Jeconiah's father. Josiah is Jeconiah's grandfather. Jehoiakim is Jeconiah's father. So why did Matthew get this wrong? Well, Matthew did not get it wrong. And here's why. Because according to Matthew, you have Josiah begot Jeconiah, who begot Shealtiel. But according to Chronicles, you have Josiah begot Jehoiakim, who begot Jeconiah. So Jehoiakim is just straight up missing, but he's not. Because what it says in First Chronicles is Jehoiakim had 4 brothers. Jeconiah had 1. That's very significant. There's something even more significant. But let's go back to Matthew for a second. So if he has 1 brother, Jeconiah, and Jehoiakim has 4, look what it says here. Josiah begot Jeconiah and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. So here Matthew is saying he has more than 1 brother. So let's look at what it really says, because if you look at the Greek, which is what you need to look at, Jehoiakim is Lekanium. Lekanium is the name. So it should say Lekanium, Josiah begot Lekanium and his brothers, and they were led off into exile. And then it's Lekanias. Those are 2 different names. It is Lekanias who then begots Shealtiel in captivity. These are 2 different names. Now, not only are they 2 different names, but Jeconiah is interpreted twice in English, because a lot of people refer to as Jeconiah as Jehoiachin. So think about that. You got Jehoiakim and you got Jehoiachin. And then when you interpret this from Greek, you got Laconium and Lysonius. Now, this is very significant because really, let's look at Chronicles again. The sons of Josiah were Jehonan, the firstborn, the second Jehoiakim, the third Zedekiah, and the fourth Shalom. The sons of Jehoiakim were Jeconiah and his son, and Zedekiah, his son, which is actually Jehoiachin. If we look at Matthew, because that was in Hebrew, Matthew is in Greek. It says, literally, Josiah begot Lekanium and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon, Lekanias begot Shealtiel. That's what it should actually say. And the other proof of this is if you look at the moment they were carried off into Babylon, up until Jeconiah, that's 14 generations. If we go to 17, it says, all the generations for Abraham to David were 14 generations. From David until the captivity of Babylon are 14 generations. So if you put Jehoiakim in there, that fits 14. But if you actually add, if you don't put him in there, and from the captivity in Babylon until Christ are 14 generations, it's not counted. It's actually 13. But if you put Jehoiakim in there, it is 14, if that makes sense. So really what this should say is, again, Josiah begot Lekanium and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon, Lekanias begot Shealtiel. And obviously Matthew would have known this by just simply looking at 2 Chronicles, and he did know it. He wrote it down in his Greek version, and then we interpret it wrong in English. But if you look at the Greek version, these are 2 totally different names, and it's very important that, again, this is kind of the problem with English. And it's important you study out the Greek and the Hebrew when there is confusion. There's a couple spots I've found already where it says something like in Daniel, they're talking about the king of the north, but it's actually the king of, it says south in in Hebrew, but yet somehow they interpret it, nor it in English. So you got to be careful of the English interpretations. That's kind of the point of all this. But if we go to 2 Chronicles, where we can see, we're going to look at Jehoiakim. So we're going to go to 36, starting verse 1. Then the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and made him king in his father's place in Jerusalem. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. Now the king of Egypt disposed him in Jerusalem, and he imposed on the land a tribute of 100 talents of silver and talents of gold. Then the king of Egypt made his brother Eliakim king over Judah and Jerusalem, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. And we'll go to 5. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord his God. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against him and bound him in bronze fetters to carry him off to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also carried off some of the articles of the house of the Lord to Babylon and put them in his temple at Babylon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim, the abominations which he did, and what was found against him, indeed they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. Then Jehoiachin, his son, reigned in his place. Jehoiachin was 8 years old when he became king. And that would be Jeconiah. So ultimately what you have here is you have Jehoiakim and his son Jehoiachin, which is why the interpretation in Greek is so similar. They're very similar names. But ultimately what Jehoiakim did, actually, let me pack this up. I'm going to keep walking it real quick. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. So here, Jehoiakim, again, begot Jehoiachin, who is Jeconiah. And he's wicked. He's a wicked king. He's wicked in the sight of the Lord. And because of that, it's him that gets bronze and fettered, because if you recall what God told his father Josiah, because Josiah was trying to turn everything around in the kingdom, he cleaned that temple up, but they stumbled across an old book that nobody had read in a long time, but it was the book of the law of Moses. And God told him, well, being ignorant of the law isn't an excuse for breaking the law. So now, ultimately, he said, you'll be fine because you humbled yourself. But just know all this stuff that I said I was going to do as far as punishment, I'm going to do. I'm just going to wait till you're dead. So as soon as Josiah dies, Jehoiakim, his son, reigns. Well, first his older brother does, and people are starting to take advantage of them. Egypt comes in, gets rid of his brother. Now all of a sudden Jehoiakim's king. Babylon comes in, takes him, and they begin to take some of the young people, and especially the smart young people, and you're going to notice what you saw was his son, Jehoiachin or Jeconiah. He was only 8 years old when he began to reign, and they're going to come snatch him up too. Take him off to Babylon. And this is really what has led the Israelites into captivity, is the wickedness of his ancestor kings. And, Josiah was able to turn around, but God said this is going down whether you like it or not, because, just because you already broke the law. Just because you didn't know about it, you still broke it. More specifically, being in the temple and putting other gods in there, when that's clearly God's house and only his name should be on it. Putting other names on it and that sort of thing. So he's leading them off in exile, just like he told them they would. And Jehoiakim is that king that kind of just really starts that process off, so there you go. They're in captivity. It's going to be interesting because obviously this, for the most part, his son was king, but you'll see he reigned when he was 8 years old, and he was a king for just a few months. So after that kind of ends Jesus's bloodline of kings. If that makes sense. but they still play a huge role in the advancement of God's kingdom. Especially Jehoiachin's grandson, Zerubbabel. That guy tears up Jerusalem in a good way. But there you go. Any thoughts or insight on this? Again, just to kind of recap, it's the confusion of the names. You got Jehoiakim, Lycaonium, and you got Jehoiachin, Lycaonius. And if you read it in Greek, like just read those two verses in the Greek version, you're gonna see, oh, those are two different people. Whereas when you look at the English interpretation, it seems to be the same person. But that's why, again, it's so important that you gotta study out the Greek when in doubt. Anytime there's some sort of confusion, just look at the original. It's important. So there you go. We'll talk about Jehoiachin next time. But thanks for joining me. I'm gonna keep walking. I haven't seen anything. It's just probably foolish to come in the afternoon. It's so hot. I'm sure all the squirrels are bedded down by now. But I'll keep walking. If I get something or even get a shot at something, I'll get on film. But thanks for joining me. Incredibly fascinating. I think we just got maybe 13 more videos, and then we get on to the life of Jesus Christ. It's beautiful. So thanks for joining me. It's incredibly important we go through this. God has me hunting and fishing through it. That's why all of this. And I'm just trying to be obedient to it. But man, I'm learning a lot. I hope you are too.